Okay, moving right along, I see our battalion chief is back from his emergency. Our fire battalion chief, Rich Owens, is going to be discussing emergency preparedness update. And this is something that I think within the next month or so that is going to be near and dear to our heart. And he has a lot of information to share, and we'll have a short question and answer session after that.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Okay, I'm here to talk about we're getting into the El Nino season. We're moving out of our fire season, even though it's not ever over for us anymore here in California. Everything's always dry. But we are moving into the rainy season, El Nino. Everybody's seen it on the news. We've been talking about it. El Nino, the predictions through the Weather Service obviously have been back and forth all summer long, trying to figure out where we're going to come out on the end with the weather. Right now the models are showing weather's going to be more like the 1997 rainy season, where we had a lot of the flooding going on. Our county alone was very subjective to a lot of the flooding issues. We've talked about tonight with Dominic about issues that we have here in our own city. So there's a few things and safety tips I want to talk about tonight in order to prepare yourselves and pass the word around, because we are campaigning very hard this year with the weather and the way it's going to affect us when we have the water coming down as much as they anticipate. So the first thing tonight I want to talk about is the turn around, don't drown. Over half of our deaths that are flood related or because of folks driving through low river crossings, flooded streets. You know, Dominic talked about if the storm drains are backing up with the mud, the water now pushes onto the roadways. Folks try to drive through those. It doesn't take much, and in the flyers I passed around, it says, you know, 6 inches of moving water can knock an adult over, 12 inches of rushing water can carry away a small car, and 2 feet will take a car completely away and put it in the drainage. You know, we saw the I-5 freeway, Highway 58 over the last week. That was unexpected. They were unprepared for that, and we saw what the outcome is. And it can be happening at any time when the weather becomes as severe as it does. The El Nino predictions this year, what we're more concerned about it in the models that they're showing is we're not going to get a lot of torrential downpour rains. It's the one storm after the other, and the consistency of the storms backing up one after the other potentially, and not allowing the soil to dry out. So with the soil not drying out, it's not retaining the water, and that water's got to go somewhere, and it's going to end up in the streets and the storm drains and where it chooses to go. So with that, you know, we're asking for property cleanup. We can't stress that enough. I know we hit you all year long, usually in spring and fall, for the weed abatement issues and mowing the weeds and keeping the weeds down. It continues when we get into the rainy season to keep the storm drains, your rain gutters clean, so that the debris doesn't back up in there and it pushes the water into the structure, into your house, into the residence. And that's where we as the fire department are more concerned, is we can't mitigate the erosion control at our level. Obviously we have, you know, very few fire engines here in town. We have 3 committed to the city that are staffed every day, and with those it comes with 9 people. 9 people are going to be very busy in the rainy season time when we're bouncing from one incident to another. And with the backup of the water, what we want to do and what we're projecting out is to keep the water from entering the structures. And that's why we're asking you to keep your storm drains clean around your residences, your gutters clean, because that's going to keep the water pushed away from the houses, so it's not going to set up and want to back into the structure. We're asking you to look at your retaining walls, the slopes, and the bare grounds to make sure that those are all manicured and kept clean as well, so that we get the water to run from the properties into the streets, the gutter system where it belongs, into the storm drains, and not being saturated within the properties and holding and building these pools of saturation. So moving on to that, I have another slide here. Let me see. I can get a little help on that one too, thanks. As we're moving into the sandbag issue. So this came out, most of you have probably already seen this. It was pushed out in the water bills back in, I believe, September, early September. We formulated this back in August, trying to get you folks to know and understand that we have sandbags available. They're at every fire station here in the city, including the state CAL FIRE fire station on Hamner. Each station has been tasked with keeping 1,000 sandbags on hand. They are not filled. Station 47 here on Hillside has the pile of sand in which you can fill the sandbags as we distribute them out. The plan is based on what has already been set forth in the county for many, many years throughout our other fire stations. And it's the distribution of sandbags to help the preparedness efforts where folks know they're going to have issues with the runoff onto their properties because of poor grading, poor soil retention, neighbors' properties that are elevated above theirs and it pushes water down. The known problems is what we're trying to get folks to start preparing themselves so that when the rain does come, it's one less thing that we're going to have to come out and help assist with because it's already been mitigated before we get there. And it allows us to spread our resources much further to start dealing with the issues and the emergencies that weren't planned for. So what that is, every day between 10 and 2, there's always going to be somebody at the front desk at Station 47. Sarah's there every day, Monday through Thursday, to hand out sandbags. When she's not there, it's the fire station staff at each one of the fire stations that'll be issuing out the sandbags. And we're issuing them out at 20 at a time. The county standard is 10. We bumped it to 20 here in the city because we are really trying to be proactive in allowing folks to get prepared for the rainy season. So with that, we ask when you show up that you bring your driver's license or some utility bill to show that you're a resident within the city, because it is an honor system in allowing folks to utilize the sand material that Public Works has worked very diligently with us in a partnership in order to make sure that we have both the bags available and the sand available to help folks get themselves set up. Anything outside of the preparedness for the rain events, we're asking that folks go to their Home Depots, Lowe's. If they're looking at building sandbag walls to prevent erosion control, mud flows coming off the hills, because we're limited to the amount of sandbags we have. And the sandbags we do have and that we distribute, we want those sandbags utilized to redirect the water from the residents, so we're not having water going inside the residents. That's our main goal, our main objective. We don't have enough sandbags and enough staff to prevent the hillsides from coming down. As Dominic said, the mud's going to do what the mud's going to do when it's raining, and once it starts moving, there's not a whole lot we can do. With the sandbags, we can make every conscious effort to redirect the water flows, and that's where we want to put it back in the streets, back into the storm drains, and not in the houses of the residents. So I know the question's going to come up that what happens when we're taxed? We're being heavily inundated with the floods, the calls, the request for assistance. You got to remember now we're in that cooperative agreement with the county, and we call to them for the resources on the fire side to get the resources we need in order to help us. The county fire department is 100 fire stations strong. We can tap into those stations. We can start moving equipment our way. We have the inmate fire crews that are readily available. If we need extra hands and staffing, we can pull those from the camp, and we can utilize those folks to start filling sandbags in order to get ahead of the game. We're not sure. I mean, it's all based on weather. It's the what if game, but as Andy and a few of our folks have attended some of the meetings throughout the county this year, Norco is actually a leader right now in the preparedness efforts for the El Nino. We're actually ahead of most of your other cities here in the county. So with that, I have one last thing, and it's the CERT team. We've resurrected the CERT team. It's been idle for over the last year, and the CERT team is your community emergency response team that's members of, we got about 20 active members currently that we've resurrected. We've already started training them in filling and sandbag building, so we can task those folks to come in and help us if we're getting inundated with the calls and the call volume and the request for service. We can count on those folks to come in and help us start filling sandbags before the other resources start showing up if we're going to have to call for resources outside the area. So with that, any questions? Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. All the fire stations, like I said, it's the fire station staff. If you ring the doorbell and nobody answers the door, it's because the engine's not there. They're going to be on an emergency incident, medical aid, something that they're usually back within that 30 minutes if it's not a fire. So if nobody answers the door, it's because we're on the emergency incident. If you didn't go to station 47 between 10 and 2. 10 and 2, Sarah will always be there Monday to Thursday unless she's on a day off, but the staff will be there. 47, right here on Hillside, 6th and Hillside. That's also where the sand's at. Now with the elderly, we've had those questions come up, the elderly, as well as folks needing assistance. Our fire crews, before they return to camp, if they finish their project work early, that they're out with their sponsors and doing project work, we're now going to be bringing them into the fire stations to have them pre-fill sandbags and start putting them on pallets for those folks that can't fill sandbags or need assistance, that we're going to try to get ahead and start preloading and building some sandbags that we can issue out and help put them in the car. Okay, so with that, and it says on the flyer, we're giving 20 out the first time. If the rain event comes and you're coming back asking for more, and the reason we do this, if you're coming back and you're going to ask for another 20 or another 40, it's going to trigger us to now go out and look at this property, because 20 sandbags is quite a bit of sandbags to direct the water flow. And if you're asking for more than 20, one, we got to make sure you're using them what we expect you to use them for, and that's to build the diversion from the residents and not using for erosion control. But if it is that, and we do have water going into residents, we probably have a much bigger issue that you yourself as a homeowner are not going to be able to mitigate. And we're going to probably have to bring in more resources, and then that gets us involved to now figure out how we're going to direct the water from the residents. That means either bringing in more resources, bringing in more sandbags, and reevaluating that issue that's going on. Yeah, we can come and take a look at the property, and we can do that. But again, if it's a known problem and it's an erosion control issue or to move, these are why we're having this talk tonight, is to get you folks prepared. And you as homeowners should be working on getting yourselves prepared and not necessarily relying on the fire department and the 20 sandbags. You should already have a plan in place and working on getting yourself set up so we're not going down the road of being behind. Okay, you can make a phone call to the fire station, set up a time, and they'll come out with the engine and they'll take a look and inspect the property and see what mitigation measures that could potentially be done, if anything, in order to assist you. Okay, any other questions? Oops.
Will it be possible to have some of them delivered to some of the seniors that live in town? We have a lot of seniors in
Yeah, we didn't come up with that plan yet, but it's been talked about, so we're going to address that issue this week. Okay, no, we've been asked that now, if we're gonna be able to provide and deliver sandbags. Again, we're dealing with the fire station staff at this point, so we can't have them separated from their fire engine, and we necessarily can't put the filled sandbags in the fire engine. So when we find our volunteer corps that we're looking at right now, and or depending on how many sandbags, we're gonna come up with a solution to assist folks on getting sandbags moved from the facility to the residents. But right now, there's nothing in place. We are going to be looking at it because we have this request. You're probably about the 6th or 7th person this week for that request that was overlooked. So we're going to take a look at that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Okay.